Trades are an essential aspect of running a sports franchise. A trade can make or break a team, especially at the trade deadline. For example, the 2021 Braves traded for many players at the deadline, such as Adam Duvall and Jorge Soler, which put them back into the playoff race. However, bad trades can put a stain on your franchise and leave fans with the question, what if? What if Randy Johnson wasn't traded by the Expos? What if Corey Kluber wasn't traded by the Padres? Back in 2006, the Brewers made one of these trades that I'm sure Brewers fans would rather forget about. And it all stems from Jeff Kent's recklessness back in 2002. And before we start, if you have your own butterfly effect scenario you'd like me to cover, leave it down in the comments. Alright, so let's head back to 2002. Jeff Kent is entering his 6th season with the Giants and is 2 years removed from his MVP season back in 2000. Kent was the last NL MVP before his teammate, Barry Bonds, went on to win the next 4 seasons worth of NL MVP awards. While Kent wasn't quite on Bonds' level in 2001, he was still a great player. Despite the Diamondbacks winning the World Series in 2001, the Giants went into the 2002 season as the favorites for the NL West. However, at the beginning of spring training, Jeff Kent was involved in an accident that sidelined him for the rest of spring training. According to Kent, he broke his wrist after he fell while washing his truck. But it didn't take long to figure out the real story. A couple weeks after the incident, it was revealed that there were 911 calls made on the date of the incident. These calls were made to report a person on a motorcycle who lost control of their bike after performing a wheelie. The wreck occurred on a road 2 miles north of Scottsdale Stadium, where the Giants play spring training games. Confronted with these rumors, Kent didn't deny the report, but he said he wished he had fallen off the motorcycle, as that would have been more fun. He also said how his contract with the Giants mentions motorcycle racing, meaning if the Giants could prove wrongdoing, they have the right to fine Kent per game missed or void his contract altogether, although that option wasn't being seriously considered. While Kent only missed a few regular season games, this was the beginning of a strained relationship with the front office. The Giants started off the season on a positive note, but they were being outpaced by other teams in their division. By mid-season, the Giants were sitting in 3rd place despite a record well above 500. In fact, team chemistry was becoming an issue. Near the end of June, during a game against the Padres, cameras captured a fight between Barry Bonds and Jeff Kent. Funny enough, they both homered later in the game, but they still lost. The fight stemmed from an initial argument between Kent and first baseman David Bell. Kent scolded Bell for throwing the ball to second base instead of tagging first base before making the throw. Bonds backed up Bell, and the argument went from there. In fact, a fan sitting near the dugout heard Kent say that he wanted off the team as it was already Bonds' team. Obviously, these types of arguments happen behind closed doors from time to time, but by this point, it was no secret that Bonds and Kent did not like each other. In fact, after this game, Kent said that this whole ordeal was overblown, as they've had many physical altercations since they became teammates in 1997. Ray Ratto of the San Francisco Chronicle said this about Kent and Bonds' relationship: "The one who lives longer will attend the other's funeral, just to make sure they're dead." So there's that. The Giants ended up making the playoffs, but fell just short of a championship when they lost to the Angels in Game 7 of the World Series. Kent was a free agent after this season, and despite being offered arbitration by the Giants, they already gave infielder Edgardo Alfonzo a 4-year deal, along with signing other notable players like Marquise Grissom and Ray Durham. Kent signed a 2-year deal with the Astros. And while Giants team officials had their problems with Kent stemming from the motorcycle crash and feud with Bonds, losing a player of his caliber was not easy to replace. Well, one of the Giants' offseason signings, Ray Durham, was positioned to be Kent's replacement. However, he dealt with a few injuries during the 2003 season, most notably an injury that caused Durham to miss most of August. At this point, the Giants were firmly sitting at the top of the NL West. fast, but losses can pile up very quickly. The Giants decided to trade for veteran Brewers infielder Eric Young, who at the time of the trade had 15 home runs, a career high, and 25 stolen bases, the most in the National League. Young didn't exactly repeat the same success with the Giants, and despite a 100-win season, the Giants lost in the NLDS to the eventual World Series champion, the Florida Marlins. So, who played second base for the Brewers for the last 2 months of the 2003 season? At first, the Brewers used 23-year-old Bill Hall. However, after third baseman Wes Helms came back from injury less than a week after Hall took over second base, Helms' replacement at third base, Keith Ginter, took over the second base spot for the rest of the season. Ginter made his debut in 2000 with the Astros, but prior to the 2003 season, he only played in 62 games in 3 seasons. Helms' injury provided Ginter an opportunity for consistent at-bats. He took advantage of it. Then, once Helms came back, Ginter took over at second base after Young was traded to the Giants. Ginter proved to the Brewers that with his consistent at-bats in the second half of the season, he was worthy of a starting spot for an entire season. In the 2004 season, Ginter was on the opening day roster for the Brewers. However, he wasn't the starting second baseman. That player was former All-Star Junior Spivey, but Ginter was still essential to this roster as he made many starts at second and third base. And after a season-ending injury Spivey sustained in early July, Ginter spent the rest of the season as the starting second baseman. Ginter's 2004 season was better than his previous season. However, there was a team in the Bay Area that was looking for a second baseman. And no, I'm not talking about the Giants. In December 2004, the Brewers traded Ginter to the Oakland Athletics. Unfortunately, Ginter did a complete 180 in the 2005 season, which ended up being the final season of his MLB career. So the trade didn't work out for the A's, but what about the Brewers? Well, they received reliever Justin Lear, who had an up-and-down tenure with the Brewers. Although, the Brewers also received a prospect in the deal, a guy who was added late in trade talks because A's GM Billy Beane knew there were other suitors for Ginter. So who was the prospect? 24-year-old outfielder Nelson Cruz. At this point in his career, Cruz was near MLB ready, as he crushed pitchers across 3 levels of the minor leagues in 2004. Cruz spent the majority of the 2005 season in AA and AAA until making his big league debut on September 17, 2005. He played in 8 games with the Brewers in 2005, but Cruz didn't play another game for the Brewers as he began the 2006 season in AAA. Also, the Brewers had a bit of a problem elsewhere. All-star outfielder Carlos Lee, who was coincidentally traded to the Brewers 3 days before the Ginter trade, was a free agent after the 2006 season, but Lee wasn't signing the contracts the Brewers were offering him. The Brewers had many young players with potential, but they weren't going anywhere in 2006, so they knew they had to trade Lee to avoid losing him for just a compensation pick. So Lee, along with Nelson Cruz, a prospect who was stuck in AAA, found themselves in a trade with the Texas Rangers, a deal where the Brewers received 4 players. Julian Cordero never reached the big league roster, while Mensch and Nix weren't exactly providing much positive value. The most valuable player the Brewers received was closer Francisco Cordero. After the 2006 season, Cordero spent 1 more season with the Brewers before ultimately signing a long-term deal with the Reds. However, Cordero was an all-star during the 2007 season and was overall one of the best relievers in baseball. But considering what the Brewers gave up, this was a terrible trade for the Brewers. Lee only spent half a season with the Rangers before signing a 6-year, $100 million deal with the Astros, a deal far larger than what the Brewers were offering. The real prize of the deal was Nelson Cruz. While it took a little while to find his footing with the Rangers, he was ultimately a key piece in those playoff teams of the early 2010s. Of course, Cruz is still going strong today and has proven to be one of the best power hitters of the past decade. Cruz could have been featured in those Brewers teams with Prince Fielder, Ryan Braun, and Ricky Weeks. But a motorcycle crash back in 2002 created a new path for not just Cruz, but the Brewers franchise as a whole. Now, before I end the video, I want to get a discussion going in the comments. The best player the Brewers got in the trade was Francisco Cordero, who was an all-star in 2007. In my research for this video's timeline, I found that in the All-Star game, Cordero gave up a home run to Carl Crawford. The American League beat the National League by 1 run. This gave the American League team in the World Series the home field advantage. Now, this didn't really come into play as the Red Sox swept the Rockies with Game 4 being played in Denver, so this home run didn't really matter to the timeline, hence why it's at the end of the video. But either way, this home run is really interesting to me because on Cordero's Wikipedia page, it mentions that it was questioned whether a fan reached over the wall to catch the ball. National League All-Star manager Tony La Russa did not bring this up with the umpire, and unfortunately, the source that initially raised this question can no longer be found. So I want to bring the question to you guys. Yes, it's a bit pixelated, but what do you all think? Did this fan reach over the wall to catch the baseball? And after you leave your answer, make sure to also write down any butterfly effects you want me to cover. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did. Subscribe to Raving Sports, and check out my channel, SportStorm. Thanks for watching.